Hello, I'm Nigel Jarrett, WWT's Conservation Breeding Manager. I've been directly involved with the headstarting of curlews in southwest England, black-tailed godwits in eastern England, and spoon-billed sandpipers in Chukotka, Russia. I've also been directly involved with the reintroduction of Eurasian cranes in southwest England and Madagascar Pochard in Madagascar. I will present on a WWT perspective of headstarting justification, headstarting feasibility, and the pound cost of headstarting. So what does headstarting do, or may do? Headstarting, through avicultural interventions, increases young bird survival during their vulnerable early life stages. And then, by releasing fledglings, we may positively change a species population trend by recruiting young birds into it. That's it. That's really it. Note, for the purpose of this presentation, my definition of headstarting is artificial hatching of eggs and raising of chicks for release at the place where the eggs were sourced or other places deemed suitable to improve the species population size and its demography. Headstarting doesn't directly address the causes for a population decline. Causes such as degradation of breeding habitat or high levels of nest and chick predation. Headstarting does not remove underlying causes of a species decline. With respect to establishing the justification and feasibility of a headstarting project, there are many international and national guidelines on species recovery. I suggest you read these documents. All are available online. Please see the chat for the links. These guidelines also provide information ranging from determining the aims and objectives of a project, its planning and its implementation. I'll now talk briefly about justification and feasibility. Justification. A justification assessment establishes if a headstarting project is necessary and appropriate for the species, and if negative impacts outweigh potential benefits, for example, impacts on the extant wild population or the source population, or impacts on stakeholders and on people's attitude to conservation activities in general. Justification to headstart curlew. Over the last 25 years, we've lost 50% of breeding curlews in the UK. Conservation scientists estimate that for a curlew population to remain stable, each breeding pair needs to produce, on average, 0.55 fledglings each year. In 2020, the Curlew Forum published an article in British Birds saying that we had around 500 pairs of curlew breeding in southern England. In late 2024, the RSPB published a website article saying the same. In the chat, I've posted links to these publications. So, if we need 0.55 fledglings per pair each year to sustain the southern England population at 500 pairs, we need 275 fledglings each year. At present, the UK breeding population produces 0.3 fledglings per pair each year. That's only 150 fledglings. That's 0.25 fewer fledglings than what's needed. 125 more fledglings are needed each year for the southern England curlew population to be stable. The Severn and Avon Vales population in southwest England has around 30 breeding pairs of curlew. 17 fledglings are needed each year to sustain this population. Only 21 chicks were fledged between 2022 and 2024, 30 fewer than needed. Only 2 actually fledged in 2024. The Dartmoor population in Devon has maybe 3 breeding pairs. 2 fledglings are needed each year to sustain this population. No chicks were fledged on Dartmoor between 2022 and 2024, 6 fewer than what's needed. Obviously, this population is on the brink of extinction. Headstarting, we believe, is justified here, so we are headstarting about 25 birds each year. Feasibility. A feasibility assessment establishes if a headstarting project has a reasonable chance of success and if it's doable. A project should be deemed feasible if, for example, we have adequate knowledge of the species ecology, a source of birds to headstart, captive rearing and release techniques are known, suitable habitat is available, and if causes of decline are being eliminated. The project must be legal, of course, and that there are sufficient financial and technical resources available. And importantly, stakeholder support exists. Stakeholder support is crucial to ensuring conservation efforts are legitimate, effective, and grounded in local knowledge of the local communities, the people who live in the area where we're going to Head Start. This includes landowners and local businesses, the people who will be affected or could even benefit from the conservation project. Government representatives also are stakeholders, scientists, and donors, the people who may provide financial support for the project. Children, of course, are really important too. These are the next generation of people who will look after our nature. So does Headstarting make a difference? In my opinion, Headstarting can make a difference because Headstarting produces lots of young birds each year, birds that may be recruited to a population as breeders in future years. Headstarting doesn't make a long-term difference if causes of decline, for example land management, is not sympathetic to the species. Why I think Headstarting makes a difference. Headstarting can produce more than 3 fledglings per pair per year, for each pair producing 4 eggs. That's 10 times more than the 0.3 fledglings produced by wild pairs at present. Do head-started birds breed successfully at release sites? Well, probably not if the underlying causes of decline aren't removed, or if fledglings recruit elsewhere, i.e. not into the target population. Here's a question though. Is it okay if head-started birds recruit as breeders away from the release site? Note that at least one curlew head-started on Dartmoor has recruited to the Severn and Avon Vales in Gloucestershire. Limitations of headstarting. Well, it's expensive, it's difficult, it's risky, but isn't everything? Also, the numbers of birds available to headstart may be limiting. At present though, in southern England, curlew egg availability is not limiting. There are 100 plus curlew eggs laid on airfield sites each year. These would be destroyed if headstarting wasn't available as an outlet. We found airfield eggs have 80% rearability, meaning 100 airbase eggs can produce 80 fledglings to reinforce the southern England population, which remember needs 125 more fledglings each year for stability. With headstarting from airfields, we are still short though of about 45 fledglings for population stability. In my opinion, this 45 fledgling shortfall justifies translocating eggs from the north to the south of England, but only if we believe by doing so we don't affect northern populations. To overcome this shortfall, we need around 60 eggs, that's maybe 15 clutches of 4 eggs from the north. Please do remember that curlews will lay a second clutch if the first clutch is lost, so maybe it won't make a difference to northern populations if first clutches are head-started in the south. Cost of headstarting. I'm often asked how much it costs to headstart, but where do you start and finish with cost calculations? Do you start when the first egg is collected or before then? For example, with project planning, fundraising, infrastructure and equipment procurement, and of course staff recruitment? And when do you finish with headstarting cost calculations? When the last bird is released, or with post-release monitoring and land management running for many years afterwards? I'm also asked, wouldn't the money be better spent on habitat management? Well, I believe we need headstarting to get birds back in numbers, and we need habitat management to create safe breeding places. I'm going to dip into my past now to give you some ballpark figures from 3 projects I've worked on: the Great Crane Project, Project Godwit, and the Severn and Avon Vales Curlew Headstarting Trial. The Great Crane Project was a partnership between WWT, RSPB and the Pensthorpe Conservation Trust with funding from Viridor Environmental Credits. The Great Crane Project was an assisted colonisation of Eurasian cranes to southwest England, starting with eggs collected from wild birds in Germany. The Great Crane Project was a translocation to an unoccupied habitat thought suitable for cranes in southwest England. The cost of the Great Crane Project was 1.2 million between 2009 and 2014, over 6 years. In today's money, the Great Crane Project had a budget of 2.05 million over 6 years. 50% of project costs were used to support staff to manage the project, hand raise birds for release, monitor cranes post-release, create wetland habitat, and deliver a landowner and community education programme. 94 birds were released at a cost of 13k per bird in 2009 money. One of the targets of the project was to achieve a breeding population of at least 20 pairs by 2025. In 2023, we surpassed the target with 30 pairs and 110 Great Crane Project cranes and their progeny, equivalent to 11k per bird in 2009's money. My next example is the headstarting costs for Project Godwit. Project Godwit was a partnership between WWT, RSPB and Natural England, made possible through EU Life funding. Project Godwit was active between 2017 and 2022. Project Godwit had an emphasis on the headstarting of black-tailed godwits. We headstarted 200 godwits in the fens and spent 1.2 million doing so. The work also included population monitoring, habitat enhancement and local community engagement, not just headstarting. The project cost about 6k per headstarted bird. We've taken the breeding population on the ooze washers from 3 pairs in 2016 to 27 pairs in 2024. In 2024, there were 38 breeding pairs of godwits in the fens of East England. Of these 38 pairs, 24 pairs, that's 63%, comprised at least one headstarted bird. That's about 50k per pair. My final example, Curlew headstarting and the Severn and Avon Vales, a partnership between WWT, Natural England and the MOD. The project headstarted 50 curlews in the Severn and Avon Vales in 2019, all hatched from eggs rescued from airfields in Eastern England. We spent about 100k, that's 2k per bird. The cost would have been more like 250k if we'd had to create from scratch the existing wetland and predator-proof fence at the release site. That works out at about 5k per bird. We've recruited at least 8 birds as breeders to the Severn and Avon Vales population. That works out at about 12.5k per pair, or 32.2k per pair if we had to create from scratch the wetland and predator-proof fencing at the release site. Money well spent, in my opinion. Well, that's it from me. I urge project managers to ascertain the costs of their projects. Thank you. Thank you again.